Lyndon, and we're going to have a chat about media and stuff.
Yeah, media and stuff.
Yeah. So what is it you do, Lyndon?
So I am a senior lecturer at University of Salford, and I'm also what they call subject head for broadcast media, which in short is the big department that has all the undergraduate, all the postgraduate courses within it that are broadcast media based.
So how did you end up in this role then?
I had a 17-year media career before this, so I was a producer and director for both television but also radio broadcast and output, ranging from, let's reel off my CV.
You've got enough digital tape, I think.
Yeah, okay, good. Started off in radio, and very quickly, because I worked for a very small independent producer, and actually that's a really good way to get, I suppose, more hands-on with making programmes versus going in to what we would call a pubcaster, right? So the BBC, ITV, whatever, where it's bigger, there's a lot more protocols as to who gets what roles and the like. So I was very quickly making quite high-profile programmes for Radio 1, same for 5 Live, Radio 4, but I absolutely cut my teeth making what used to be called, the music specials or Lamach Live documentaries. Steve Lamach was still doing evening session and then into Lamach Live. So I travelled the world and travelled the music industry, really, making rockumentaries, music documentaries, music specials, and youth culture specials, subculture specials. It was a brilliant slot, and made, when he just won the Mercury Music Prize, a kind of follow around America rockumentary with Badly Drawn Boy. That's the first thing I ever did. And it was a bit, if you've ever seen the Almost Famous film with Cameron Crowe in it, he was the Rolling Stone journalist that it was his coming of age biopic film, and basically spent the entire film trying to chase this band down for an interview. Got all the recordings on the periphery, but never pinned down the main person for the interview until the very, very end. And that was very much my experience, touring with Damon Gough. He was an amazing guy, just there's no time on tour to sit down and do those big long-form interviews. So in the end, and it was my first visit to Manchester, actually, so it's a sort of, I suppose, pertinent story, because actually the tour was Seattle, San Francisco, LA, Las Vegas. He nipped off to Salt Lake City, and then we came back round to New York City, where he played the David Letterman show. And I was 20. 2021.
So that was a cool job then.
So it was very cool, but it was also flying by the seat of your pants and actually nerve-wracking, because I'd just gone from uni straight into being given this opportunity. And the reason I got the opportunity was because I sort of came up with the idea, and then we pitched it to Radio 1, and the commissioning editor said, if you can do it for X amount of money, because it was a foreign trip, go ahead. And then the boss of that company then said, so get packed and off you go. Yeah. We got the permissions to be with them because a member of the team, his brother was the guitarist.
Right, okay.
And sometimes that's how it happens, isn't it? You've got a bit of a link.
So what did you do on that particular trip? Did you produce the show? Or?
Yeah, producing. So the beauty of radio, I think, and I don't know how it's changing now, I think you have smaller teams, but you still have very small teams. But back then, it was very much a one-man band type thing. So those Radio 1 documentaries, they didn't have huge budgets, but they did have budgets. And with that, as long as they acknowledged there was travel involved, you could do amazing things.
Okay.
And I would record in the field. That back then it was minidisc.
Yes,
so I had a brilliant Sony stereo field mic, a really good, I can't remember the brand, but a kind of mono-directional mic for close mic interviews, and a minidisc recorder. And that's all you needed. And your Radio 1 mic cube if you wanted to go public for vox popping, things like that, which was a bit of a calling card, even in the States.
So were you asking the questions as well?
Yeah, asking the questions as well. Yeah. Of course, this is the producer's thing, really. You can often be the one doing the interviews, asking the questions, all that stuff. and then my voice gets taken off, and then Steve Lamacq and I wrote the script, and then he voices it. You see,
Right.
so I just disappear, and you're always recording with that half in mind. So you're always asking people to. Well, if you're good, you ask open questions, and they put the question in the answer anyway.
Okay.
But very often, you're forever reminding people, could you put the question I just asked you in the answer as well, so it works on its own?
Yeah.
And people think you're bonkers,
Okay.
but you absolutely need it. Yeah. So started in radio, did loads of stuff like that, made the 10th anniversary Death of Kurt Cobain documentary special for Radio 1. And got that commissioned because everyone else was pitching, well, we got this person. The simple truth was Dave Grohl wasn't speaking, and he's the main man you wanted to speak. So it was people on the periphery. So we came up with the idea of, what's Nirvana about 10 years on from Kurt Cobain's death? And actually, it's the kind of fervour and the unwavering love for him and Nirvana from fans existing there at the beginning, but also a whole new generation of fans. And even today, that's true. Some of my students are big into Nirvana, you know. And God knows how much of a glimmer in the eye of somebody they were. They weren't born for decades.
Yeah.
You know,
that,
crazy.
Yeah.
So we pitched Kurt and me, which was the idea. We ran a Radio 1 competition, signed up fans of Nirvana, entered it, and then we would shortlist it down and do a bit of a kind of, not screen test because it was audio, but audio test as an equivalent. Just see that they could talk and that they'd be good, and you know, and then picked our winner.
Right.
And I took him off to Seattle, Washington, and also to Aberdeen, where Kurt Cobain grew up, little town called Aberdeen.
Involved,
yeah, loads of travel involved. And it was a ticket. It was I didn't realise what a clever trick it was, but it was a clever trick because actually we really opened up doors that the big players, BBC Radio 2, MTV, all these people were trying to do the 10th anniversary things. But because we were letting a fan come with us and ask the questions, and that was a ticket, and people spoke. So we got Chad Channing, who was the original drummer of Nirvana before Dave Grohl came in. We got Jack Endino, who was one of their producers, just on that cusp of moving to Geffen Records and things. And we just got amazing content. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant.
So loads of good memories from radio.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved radio. There's an intimacy to it. There's an immediacy to it. And there's a kind of, I think, authenticity to the way people speak to you.
It's still doing well as well, radio, isn't it? If you look at the figures, I think I saw something in the media recently saying that listeners were quite high at the moment.
Yeah, so they call them the radars for broadcast radio. So sporadic periods, I was going to say quarter. I'm not sure if they are quarterly. I think they are. You get your radars, which is basically your radio audience listening figures. And for decades, again, even back to when I was at university, which was the late 90s, radio was being predicted as dying off, waning, being a media of the past or a medium of the past. And that's just not happened.
Yeah.
And podcasting, of course, has massively helped. Audio storytelling, audio content, internet radio in the noughties was a real boon.
Yeah.
DAB's fantastic. It's in most cars now. But radio fits into people's lives in a way that sitting down and watching a screen doesn't, because you have to absolutely focus. Whereas audio, radio, whatever you want to call it, podcasts, you can do what you're doing. I was listening to a BBC investigation podcast on the way here.
Yeah, they're convenient, aren't they?
They're really
fit in.
Yeah.
They say.
So radio, that was one thing, and then television as well. So I moved to Manchester with the company I first started out with. They relocated when technology got good enough to deliver programmes down the line or over early broadband, but also do interviews down the line, the old ISDN codec and things like that.
No dodgy satellite link anymore.
Well, right, yeah, exactly. And we had an ISDN emulator in the back of a PC, and actually that meant you didn't have to buy super expensive studio version of rack mount with ISDN coming in and things. And it's that early stage, I suppose, of everything becoming emulating or affordable or cut price. We were talking about these cameras and mics, weren't we? About how even low-cost stuff is great quality these days. And it was the sort of first wave of that, really. We could deliver broadcast production remotely, basically. So we moved to Manchester as a company, and then it was a small company. There were 2 directors, a handful of staff, did some amazing stuff just to stay in that realm, I suppose, a little bit. So we made the 5 Live report as well for BBC Radio 5 Live. That was their investigative slot. I'm not a journalist, but I produced broadcast journalists to present and investigate those kind of things. And we did all sorts from, I remember the Phantom Crash Merchants, that's the first one that popped in my head, which was about people who were sort of working as gangs to kind of organise that their vehicles would be in front of someone, and then they'd slam on the brakes and the person would go into the back of them.
Yeah.
And of course, you're automatically at fault if you go into the back of someone, and then they'd claim massive whiplash injury and things like that. And then the kind of litigious claims would come through. And it was all these organised gangs actually based in the former mill towns of the Northwest.
Wow.
And I made that with this great former Daily Mail war correspondent, Hack. He was a brilliant journo, and his name escapes me, but he was brilliant. And we proper doorstepped all the people who had been involved and
isn't
stuff.
it?
Really bold.
Yeah.
Like Robert Cook style, or the Cook Report style.
Oh, yeah.
Roger Cook, not
Roger
Robert
Cook, yeah,
Cook.
yeah.
And again, I was only in early 20s, so this was a bit bonkers.
Yeah.
And the 5 Live report was amazing. And then prior to moving to Manchester, just to mess the timeline up a little bit, and this was probably the most difficult thing of my career, but in a way, the thing that taught me most in just 72 hours, they selected All Out Productions, the production company I was working with, to be one of the first teams that went out on the first charter flight after 9/11.
Right.
So 9/11 happened, and just 48 hours later, me and my boss, a very experienced investigations producer, just very experienced radio features producer, we were off to New York, and we were there to make a documentary. To quick turnaround. It happened on the Tuesday morning, I think. Then we aired something quick turnaround by the weekend on the Sunday morning.
Right, okay.
So that was insane.
Yeah, but it was. And that was a weird time. Travel wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy. Well, I mean, we were literally waiting at the airport to get on the first charter flight going out of the London airports.
I guess you managed to get a bit of a short cut there with it being a charter flight.
I think so. It was the most strange flight I've ever been on, because there was myself and my colleague, boss, David, and then a few other journos, but that was it.
No.
It was like this 350-seat flight with about 12 people on it. It was the strangest thing.
Was, yeah.
Strangest thing. And though we weren't in first class, you could still fold up the armrests and just have a full bed.
Lie down.
I mean, I don't think I'll ever be on a long-haul flight like that again.
Unless you spend a lot of money.
Well, quite, and go the first class route.
Whole row.
But it was a strange time. It just had a very strange atmosphere to it. And I suppose I was too young, really, to kind of be affected by that as deeply as I might have been.
Were you in your mid-20s, you say?
Yeah, 23, 24.
I turned 30 in the August.
Okay.
And as part of my 30 thing, I went to Magaluf with some people. And we were just like there when that happened.
Wow.
And it was like, all the bars were like in that area at the time. Don't know if it's still the same, but at the time there was all like Only Fools and Horses on all the TVs and the pubs and the bars.
Yeah,
It was
like bars
repeats.
Out there.
Repeats of that. And then the next thing you know, it's just that news report in every bar for days. And it was weird. It changed the atmosphere.
Those visuals over and over and over again. It was the most videoed and photographed terrorist attack ever, wasn't it? Because it's right in the heart of somewhere that's always being filmed and photographed.
Crazy. And then flying back, just I think a few days later, that was just chaos.
Yeah.
We were in queues and crowds of people trying to get like cancelled and delayed flights for, I think it was, I can't remember the exact time, it was at least 24 hours. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the world stopped, didn't it?
The world stopped.
My friend Dave, different Dave, not my boss Dave, he was on the last flight in the air in the world because he was flying from the States to, I think, the South Pacific. And so it was probably one of the longest duration flights. So his recounting of it was he was the last plane in the air. And of course, they weren't telling people. They were just saying.
Oh, did
I
he
don't
not
know what
know
they
at
were
the time?
telling.
Right.
I don't know what they. I think they had to say something.
Okay.
Because I think they had to circle for ages. Because
Really?
everywhere had to get special air traffic control permission and show they were not a threat. And very, very strange time. But arriving in New York, literally in the aftermath of that. I mean, the dust hadn't settled. It was in the air. It was thick in the air. And probably not to get too much into the final details, but there was a smell in the air that was not just building rubble. It was really, really unpleasant. And also the posters in the parks and people just sitting with candles lit and kind of meditating or holding hands and you're talking, well, of course, thousands of posters, people desperately hoping that someone had taken a knock to the head, but they were just walking around perhaps a bit lost and of course the truth was probably not, and getting people to speak was quite difficult. There's a thing that happens in the aftermath of a big incident like that, and it could be small, it could just be them that's gone through it, could be a car accident or whatever. There's initial shock, and then there's a period where people just want to speak. They want to get it off their chest. They just want to kind of testify or whatever, sometimes confess or, just get it out. They need to speak about it. And I suppose because we didn't get on flights because everything was grounded for a number of days, actually people had got to that point now where they'd gone really quite insular and quiet about stuff. And so that's a challenge when you're a producer. Because obviously you've got to have an ethical consideration for do people want to talk or not. But equally, when you're dispatched out there to cover such a huge news event like that, you've got to find a way to get the right people to speak so that you can turn that program around. And it was important because actually, we were only devising this there. I mean, 5 Live trusted us enough to... because we were on a rolling commission with the 5 Live report. It meant we made half of them in the year and BBC News and Current Affairs made half of them in a year. So that's every week for an entire year. Yeah. So that's 26 programmes each, yeah?
It's a lot.
A lot. So they trusted us to kind of zone in on what the subject would be. And the thing that occurred to us was it's how does New York now move into a new world order and how do they cope with the aftermath of that? So we made it in that vein. And actually, once we'd got past the no, go away, blah, 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 we got people to talk because actually they sort of did want to talk about what's next. What do we do now? Also, aforementioned trip with Badly Drawn Boy, I'd met some cool people in New York associated with Beggar's Banquet, his label Subsid out there because they're linked to XL Recordings, who he'd ended up being signed with here. And so much of what you do in the media sometimes is just working those contacts, not in a cynical way, but just we're going to be in town, we're coming back because of it. How are you? Is everyone okay? Yeah. And then there's that spider web of, well, my friend knows this person and they were X and they saw, and and so it kind of worked like that. So in a weird kind of way, although it was very robust journalism, most of the people who were brave enough to speak to us and we spent time featuring and telling their stories, they were through that spider web outward contact.
Right, so the network effect there is
it's massive,
apparent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah. It's massive. And not in a cynical way, not in a pushy sales way or anything like that, not in a doorstepping journalist way, just in a very gentle, authentic human way of having at least a lukewarm point of contact. Oh, Jen's put us in touch with you. How are you? Are you coping? We hear that, and just seeing if they wanted to talk, and they did. But the technical side of that, I didn't know what we talk about today, right? But it is interesting technically from a music or a voice editing and mixing point of view. Because at the time, it was still too early to have the whizzy laptops that we have now and do desktop editing. It hadn't come through yet, 2001. You still had big hardware in your studio. and I don't know if you've heard of it more on the music production side of things, but there was a specifically designed radio feature editing software, but it was hardware too, called Sadie.
Oh, yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so we were on Sadie, everything we mixed and put out was Sadie, and you had these huge kind of pull-out drives, right?
Okay.
And you'd plug them in, you'd lock the switch over.
I remember seeing those,
boot up Sadie, but then you'd also have a kind of rack mount hardware interface, ins and outs, and that kind of thing. So it's not something you can put in your case and disappear with.
No.
So I do remember while we'd both dashed home to pack our cases to head off there, I also took money from our work's petty cash tin, a reasonable amount, and went and bought the best laptop I could for what cash money we had from Tottenham Court Road. And then also bought a copy of a piece of software called Cool Edit.
Yes.
Which was about as close as you could get to what we'd have with digital audio waveform stuff, a la Pro Tools or Logic or Ableton, Adobe Audition, that kind of thing now, which just seems commonplace, right? But you didn't. Yeah. So got a copy of Cool Edit. I'd used it at uni, so I became the editor of that project. Right, and it's funny, in the industry, if you've done something and you've got a skill, you should always try and keep that up and think about that when there are situations arising where actually you might get an opportunity from it.
I suppose it makes you very useful and versatile as a person.
Well, it does, because I knew how to edit that, which meant my boss, who was an extremely experienced editor who would have just whizzed it out on Sadie, didn't have a clue, didn't know the shortcuts, and kind of gave me an enhanced role, really. Not cynically, again. I wasn't. Given the circumstances, I wasn't trying to do career progression.
Just trying to be helpful, I suppose.
Just trying to be helpful. So we ingested all the material and we cut that down, and I was cutting, and he was getting extremely frustrated because he's so used to just cutting as he would see fit. But we found a workflow. The mad thing was, because of RAM, because of the software at that stage, computer processing power, once we'd done a full mix with maybe 5 or 6 tracks, and you've got your layer of atmosphere and wild track and sounds and music and news reports, and you want good discipline on your tracks, it was crashing. It was crashing, so we couldn't do a bounce out.
Oh no!
Right, and the something that was amazing to see it swing into action was the BBC News machine arriving in town with Peli cases and flight cases and huge boxes and satellite dishes and things like that, and just took over the whole 2 floors of a midtown hotel, which we were part of. So we got rooms within that as well. And then there was the broadcast engineering suite. So they got a suite because they needed desks and all sorts. So we went and spoke to the broadcast engineer who was going to link us up by satellite, initially to transfer the WAV bounce that had come out of that. We explained the problem. He was like, oh yeah, you're on air in an hour. That kind of thing.
Oh dear. No pressure.
No pressure, right. And the only workflow we could think to come up with was to consolidate and mix down everything.
Right.
So all you had within Cool Edit was stereo mix down, and then try and bounce that out, but it wouldn't bounce out still. So in the end, he said, we're just going to have to take the biggest risk, aren't we? And for a pre-recorded, quick turnaround, live play out of this, we're going to have to take the audio out of your laptop, and we're going to put the playhead at the top of the stereo mix down we'd managed to do. Because it would play, it just wouldn't bounce out.
Right, okay.
And we're going to press space when network tells us we're on.
Wow.
And we're going to...
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
And the other thing was...
And I guess that would be a tiny 3.5 jack, millimetre jack.
Yeah, which is good quality stereo,
It's a bit risky.
It's risky.
Yeah.
It's not got any fail-safe.
No.
I mean, what used to happen with the 5 Live report was they would be playing out mirrored versions of the programme.
Right.
So that if something crashed, they'd just...
redundancy.
Fade up the...
Yeah. So you didn't... You had no safety net at all.
No safety net at all. Yeah. And the mad thing was, I remember specifically, to connect to 5 Live network, where he'd been connected to a different BBC network, he actually... I mean... Health and safety was a thing in 2001, but this was a major world news event, and maybe some risks were taken. But he pretty much leant out the window of the suite on this 50th floor of a midtown high-rise hotel and adjusted the satellite dish, which presumably someone had lent out and rigged up a scaffold pole to put the satellite dish on in the first place, because all the wires were coming in, they were all gaffer taped up and things like that. It wasn't like there was some amazing on the roof flown in thing. I mean, it was not cobbled together. These are experts, but it was makeshift.
Yeah, sounds it.
Anyway, deep breath. Yeah, it came off the back of the news. We were cued in by network on the talkback channel, and we pressed play. And I just remember sitting there, eyes tight closed, fingers crossed.
How long was the report in the end?
What was it? It's a 30-minute documentary.
For 30 minutes. Your life probably went really slow.
Absolutely. So slow, and it's so frustrating. There's nothing you can do.
God, yeah.
And okay, you could rewind the playhead a little bit and press play again, but it would stutter on output, right? But the worst fear was it would crash. And the cooling fan in the laptop was sounding like it was burning out, and madness.
That's good.
So, I mean, I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? Because people will think...
We have it so easy compared to that.
Well, they'll just think that well-oiled machine of the BBC has always just been a seamless, technical force to be reckoned with. And indeed it is. But that doesn't mean things don't go wrong all the time. And those amazing people who are the engineers and stuff who just ensure that it very rarely drops off air. Very rarely drops off air. Yeah.
Yeah, they just keep doing whatever they need to do to keep it going. Yeah, that's good, that.
Yeah.
So was minidisc gone by that point?
So both the Badly Drawn Boy stuff, all the stuff I did for Radio 1, 9/11, everything else... I did all my radio recordings because it was in the field features recording. That was my gig, really. That's the stuff I produced and love producing that. You get to tell amazing stories and go to amazing places. And mic and minidisc is tiny, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You're very portable. First stint I did in radio, and I left radio in 2005.
Right.
When I returned to it in 2010, 2011, we were on SD recorders and things like that.
Yeah.
So my one of choice there was a beautiful handheld Olympus thing with a kind of cardioid mic and crossfield stereo mic where you can get the wind jammers on it and stuff. And it was
like
tiny.
a recorder.
In fact, the problem was it was so small that you needed something bigger on it to hold it. So I got the pistol grip that you get on a big directional mic. You know, the ones with the
like
big furry hamsters on them and stuff. So I just got one of those cheap, and that was perfect. It stops the handling noise because it's got a rubberized grip and stuff like that. So in a way, recording equipment, sometimes it's too small for its own good. So that's a fast forward. But yeah, all those features that I've referred to and many, many others, it was minidisc and a mic.
Right.
I loved minidisc.
It's interesting because minidisc was one of these things I had at some point in it, like a hi-fi system.
Yeah.
And I used to do backing tracks for cabaret singers.
Okay, yeah.
And I had to start putting them onto minidisc.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
It sounds... Because before that, it was tape.
Yeah. And then there was DAT, but DAT, it wasn't user-friendly like minidisc was.
No, but it was better than minidisc.
Yeah, it was lossless. Minidisc had compression on it.
That's it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like you say, it wasn't as user-friendly because you were literally using a tape, weren't you?
Yeah.
I remember the minidisc didn't go away for a long time.
No.
So basically, when I started selling music and stuff, even in 2005 to like 2008, 9, 10 and onwards, I ended up working with voiceovers because somebody said to me, "Oh, I need to do an on-hold message on my phone.
Okay.
I want to use your music. Do you know any voiceovers?" So a new service sort of emerged from that.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying, "Oh yeah, I can record at home and I'll send it over to you as a file. I'll just have to convert it from my mini disc."
Okay.
And I'm like, "But it's 2007 or whatever it was." And I'm
but they're still using it.
They're still using it. And this went on for a while. And then I think voiceovers then went over to MP3s. Some of them worked for the BBC. And they had very set ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And the mini disc was...
remained a living legacy.
It did, yeah.
Well, I suppose that's big organisations. It's very difficult to just go hook, line and sinker into new technology when you've got workflows and many, many bits of hardware that kind of work for you. Yeah. I mean, mini discs were not infallible.
Absolutely,
That Badly Drawn Boy programme I made for Radio 1, probably the best bit of recording happened one night in Beverly Hills where they had their hotel, the band being Badly Drawn Boys, one guy, but the band.
Yeah.
And we kind of got cut off from the hotel because there was a gunman on the loose. I mean, genuinely, there were like 10 US police or LAPD squad cars up there. And then the reason it was a good story was because touring's so relentless, and there comes a point 3-4 weeks into a tour where you think they're drinking all night, but actually they just want to get back to the hotel because they're so knackered. And it was one of those. So what you got was the backdrop of this kind of stakeout of this guy who was on the loose with a gun, and this street closed off, and it was the street the hotel was on. But then you got 4 or 5 Manc lads who were just being hilariously funny in a very Mancunian type way, which had a kind of almost, Ballydrum Boy declared himself the next John Lennon because he's going to get shot dead in a minute and he'll go down as one of the working class heroes. Very tongue-in-cheek. But it was golden audio because it was just all this sort of the fatigue of touring with the backdrop of a shootout potentially about to happen and being unable to get back to your hotel room after the gig. Anyway, I was so excited about this audio when I got back to London, ingesting things into Sadie left, right and centre. This mini disc goes in and it just has TOC edit reading on it, which is table of contents edit. So it just hasn't got the computer menus for the audio recorded. And this is why it's so amazing when you're working even in conjunction with the BBC and things, because what I did was get in touch with the commissioning editor and said, this is terrible, this has happened. We have no means of getting this back. We're a small indie production company. She said, well, we speak to our tech guys. They spoke to some tech guys at Radio 1 who said, oh, you need this guy in BBC Broadcasting House. He's a whiz when it comes to minidisc errors. Went into the bowels of Broadcasting House and just remember standing in this room with all these rack mounts wall to wall for about 20 metres. I mean, there was every format and every codec and every piece of hardware and play out thing ever existing in the world, old and new, in that room. And in the end, to cut a long story short, because it's techie, but he basically had found a way to take all the kind of drawer and things off a mini disc so that you didn't have to press eject and wait for it to come out. You could forcibly remove it from its tray. And what he did was he had this kind of trial and error thing where he put a working mini disc in where table of contents was absolutely fine. And at the point he'd do TOC reading, he would switch out that mini disc for my broken mini disc, and then he had to do it several times. And eventually he cheated the broken mini disc into having the table of contents that the working one had. And then he said, the last thing we need to do is now record something at the end. He said, I might record over a piece of audio because it's not the right table of contents. Everything's everywhere, right? He said, but you'll be able to reassemble it once you've ingested it. And he just recorded 10 seconds of tone. That enabled it when he pressed stop for it to redo the TOC on that. So it then imprinted the data of a TOC edit from the original working mini disc, took the broken mini disc out, put it in a normal player, it read it, and it was all there.
What a useful bloke.
What a useful guy. And the BBC's full of people like that. They've got special projects now. There's something called the Blue Room, which is an R&D room.
Sounds a bit sort of spy-like
and Bond-like. There's some amazing people, and actually you'd think their work gets less and less as technology becomes, I suppose, more reliable and fail-safe. But it's more complicated now, right? So I still think there's huge need for those guys. Yeah. So he was my friend that day. In fact, my best friend ever.
I bet you were so relieved.
What a guy.
No, it is terrible that when something goes wrong and you can't fix it, and if you can get somebody to fix it.
Amazing.
So you're just so grateful.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I've had that happen before where I've lost something that's like, it's got literally, it's not replaceable, or there's just like 50 hours gone into it, and it's like,
So our students get sick of us saying, back your media up. And don't just back your media up, back your projects up. You know, that's a kilobyte or a couple of megs of edit decisions, and it's such a tiny file. But if you lose your edit decision list or whatever piece of software particularly calls it, that's all that edit time gone.
Absolutely.
And that was a kilobyte or a megabyte file.
And then
you
you
could have
delete
been
all your
up.
backups after that you don't need. You just keep the last 10 or whatever.
Yeah,
you need.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that for years because I in my DAW. it had like an autosave. So you'd be writing some music, and then at some point it'll just autosave.
Yeah.
Brilliant. This is fail safe, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not going to go wrong. It just keeps autosaving. And you can also sort of step back as well with this autosave. But what I never expected was one day for the file that I'd been working on for 50 hours to suddenly get corrupted. And after the corruption happened, I don't know why it happened now, but after it happened, it would never open again. And I couldn't step it back. I couldn't do anything. I spent hours on the internet trying to work out how to sort of save it. There was no way to save it. And that taught me. So every time I do something now, it starts at 001, and then it goes to 002, 3, and so on.
Yeah.
And I end up with probably about 100 files on average. Maybe just a bit more. But by the time I've done, the habits of doing that now, I'm never going to be in that situation again. And I have had it happen again, where a file's got corrupted or something's
lost 3 hours work because you've been able to roll back.
Yeah. And so I don't even use the rollback anymore. I turn the autosave off.
Okay.
I just make my own save.
Yeah.
Because
then they're distinctly different projects, right?
Yeah.
And so you're not going to inherit that bug.
No. And like you say, it's kilobytes, the tiny files.
Yeah.
I think the whole folder adds up to megabytes in the end, but it's not a big deal.
No, absolutely.
And you can and then even stepping back is easier and quicker. And there's no, I don't like the auto-save idea of every 5 minutes it does a save, because that doesn't mean anything to me. I can sit there for 5 minutes thinking about something.
Yeah.
But then in 5 minutes I can do a ton of work as well, so it doesn't matter. So the minute I've done a few, say 10 minutes of intense thinking, I'll do a save.
Yeah.
And if I'm just doing little bits here and there, it might be another 20 minutes before I do a save.
All the video editors now I'm talking about, I've ever worked with, because producer in television, maybe we'll come on to that in a minute.
Yeah.
You wouldn't edit your own stuff usually. You would work with an editor, and then you become an edit producer if you follow into the edit the stuff you might have been shooting on location. Every editor I've ever worked with has ended the day with a file save as and saved a copy of the project.
Right.
Same reason they can pick, there are mirror drives in facilities, and you're never, hopefully, going to lose things beyond just having to go to the mirror drive or the backup to get it, because there's a version history on that. But editors just like to know where they saved their copy and therefore where they're picking up from the next day.
Yeah,
because it's the end of a day's work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's human housekeeping,
Indeed.
Not just automatic, silent backing up in the background.
No.
Yeah.
And you can't always rely on those auto backup things either, because
As you just said.
Well, yeah, but then even like having a backup on your computer. I mean, I use Dropbox a lot.
Yeah.
And it works fine most of the time. But I had it connected to my music machine, connected to the internet.
Okay.
And it was backing up my music files, and I was thinking, well, that's really good.
Yeah.
And they were backed up, but the thing that happened that really screwed it up was I purchased a plugin that had some kind of weird conflict with Dropbox.
Okay.
And it caused a blue screen of error, the blue screen of death.
Blue screen of death.
Yeah. And I had to step it back, and I just couldn't get back to where I was, so I had to sort of step it back a long way. I think, I tried stepping it back, and then still had the problem, it kept crashing, and then had to reinstall Windows.
Yeah.
And this was just because of a conflict between two pieces of software. Now, you wouldn't have ever thought that would even happen, but it did. You can have a conflict and think, well, that's a nuisance, but to lose your entire operating system because of it just doesn't make sense.
No.
You just don't think it happens.
Unheard of.
But it did.
Heard of.
Yeah, but I mean, when I looked into it, this particular manufacturer had known issues with Dropbox and other services like that.
Yeah.
Great.
So there is something of Sod's Law, and I'm speaking about our students every year now when they get into final projects.
Right.
They're making, for them, really big things, and they are really big things. They're huge. They're their final documentary or final TV studio show or final audio Factual program, which is loosely radio feature and podcast bundled together. There is this thing where the gremlins of the technical assassination variety come out at the worst possible moments, and who knows what that is that the servers here are stressed, so actually they're working hard cards, so they're gonna fail. But it's not that. It's SD cards that won't mount. It's drives that just corrupt, and it is a sod's law thing. The gremlins come out to play when you least need it.
Or expect
or
it
can
as well,
happen,
yeah.
or it can happen and you get away with it. So there's always one or two students each and every year that fall foul of a drive corrupting or something.
Okay.
And then you just go, did you listen back in week 1 when we banged
Clearly
the drum
not.
back up? Some have, some haven't, So we've had a mixed outcome of that. But
I bet.
I do feel for them.
Yeah. You've got to go through it once, I think, to really find out how bad it feels.
Yeah.
And then once you've had that feeling, you'll never do it again.
Yeah.
You know?
No, very true. I have had a radio disaster. I was hired. This is how I came back to radio, really. I was hired by what was then called Ten Alps Productions, and that's a conglomerate of loads of little different indies and things. Started by a media entrepreneur called Alex Connock. He's now a professor or a doctor of research at Oxford University into AI and media and things now. Very clever guy. But he founded this company with Bob Geldof, and then they floated it on the stock market and did very well for themselves. But he was just exiting the company and kind of, I think, was almost on gardening leave, i.e. as a director he was going to be bought out of the company. So he just played and got some things away with 5 Live, and when I say played, like he's used to running this huge conglomerate media company, and actually he came down almost to series producer level, and then commissioner or controller of 5 Live, John O'Wall at 5 Live, great guy. He now runs BBC Sounds. So he bought Alex's kind of renegade maverick approach to making radio. It was always a bit cheeky, always a bit pushing of boundaries. There would be almost purposeful creation of conflict between guests and things like that. Alex likes putting the cat among the pigeons.
Right, okay.
So he hired me. He hired a producer friend and colleague of mine called Joe Meek, who's a really, really experienced, amazing, award-winning radio features producer and radio show producer, full stop. Her and I were at uni together, so that thing of keeping your networks going, we've always stayed in touch, as I have with many people, as far back as studying with them. And it's amazing how many times your paths cross and you end up working together and stuff. Anyway, her and I kind of produced this 11, 12-part series called We're All in This Together, and it was just as the Tories had got elected to coalition government. Remember, it was Cameron and Nick Clegg as deputy, and they were just immediately tearing up the country, right, and reforming and putting austerity through everything and just ripping the country up, basically. I can be political now. I'm no longer for the BBC. Anyway, it was the last few months of the BBC on Oxford Road in Manchester. Media City had nearly been built. The BBC buildings were just being kitted out. So we were in the last networkable radio station at Oxford Road. Usually, and if you went over there now, that again, there's a backup studio, right, that instantly boots up or is already preloaded with the settings of the show that's happening, and you can just move straight through. If you drop network, or if your studio goes offline, or if there's catastrophic failure of a piece of kit, you kind of seamlessly just wander through to the next studio and things. But because Oxford Road was being worked out, it only had one functioning networkable radio studio, and we were in that. And I'm not joking. You know that bit in the Death Star where they power down? Woo,
I think so,
that, and it goes into darkness.
Yeah, you're a Star Wars fan, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit.
I think,
yeah. Anyway, it's very cool noise, very sci-fi noise, but everything goes dark, and I think I know the noise. It's very ominous and worrying. That happened minutes before we went live on air with this show.
Oh no!
And actually, all the last few engineers that were working in there, and this Sunday morning live show, so you haven't got your regular shift staff and stuff like that. So it was a skeleton staff of broadcast engineers as well. Suddenly we're about to go live on air. We're sitting in the chairs that we sit in the control room. The presenters sit in that side, ready to go live. We're on the news. Sports Week has been on before us, which is important because normally on a show predecessing your show, it would be news and current affairs, right? And there's a disaster, but they stay on and they return after the news and they broadcast as long. Sports Week's done and they've gone. because they can't continue a broadcast. They can't react to any breaking news or live story coming in because they're not those kind of on-air journalists.
Are they pre-recorded as well?
I think they were live,
Oh, they
but
were
I
live,
just
right.
think they just had
That's their
done
remit.
off, right? Their news, and off they went.
Yeah.
And so we got into this crazy elongated news report because I'm on the phone to White City, actually. It was Five Live's HQ, right? It wasn't at Broadcasting House. And they're sort of saying, we're filling on news as much as we can, but we have no presentation here. We have no presenters here. What can you do? And the bottom line was we'd fatally lost our ability to connect to network from that studio.
Oh, God.
And the reason I mentioned the Death Star powering down is because at the point all the lights should have come up, the red light should have gone on.
Right, okay.
We should have leant forward.
Yes.
And the presenter should have started the intro to the show.
Right.
We went boom and turned everything off just as we were supposed to go on air, which was basically the engineers rebooting the studio in the hope that that reboot would solve the problem.
Right, okay.
But it's a 7-minute reboot of a studio like that. That one that old as well. And Alex Connick, who is this top media mogul, you would think he'd be hopping mad, right? You know, because he was sitting in the back there. He was so amazing, actually. I spoke to him about this afterwards, and I was like, you just seemed unconcerned. And he said, well, the worst thing I could do in that moment is start being like a cat on hot bricks and saying, what, do this, do that. He said, because it's not my gig. You're, Joe and I flip-flop between output editor and program producer, which are two different roles. Joe was output editing, which meant she had the direct link to the presenter. So she was in the hot seat that day. I had one slightly less type huge role being the producer, so I keep everything on time and keep everyone coming in and make sure that these SMs getting the guest up on the line and all that kind of stuff. But it was still a very double-headed, intense moment. And the only thing we could do was, once upon a time, if you were going to be a guest on a radio show anywhere in the world, you could go to what is called an NCA booth at any BBC place with radio facilities. And some places in the sticks, they're little buildings with a cupboard, and you open the cupboard and there's your NCA ISDN contribution booth. So that an MP can come in and they can...
I'm with you.
And that's all we had within BBC Radio Manchester, is one of their NCA booths. And I remember the only Jobsworth in the whole thing was the guy doing security on front desk. Because I ran through from the bowels of the studio area through to front desk and went, I think I was polite to begin with, so please open the NCA booth. We've gone off network and we're supposed to be carrying network and be live to the nation on 5 Live.
How many minutes did you have to spare at this point?
I mean, we should have been on air at that point.
Oh, you should have been on, right?
7-minute news, where it would have been a 3-minute bulletin.
Right.
And now we're getting this crazy elongated weather report. I mean, it was just insane. A sport, suddenly they're talking about push penny in Darlington or something like that, you know. Right. Anyway, this security guy was not for opening the BBC Radio Manchester booths, because I wasn't staff for Radio Manchester, so my pass didn't work for that. And then I lost it, and it was one of those not proud of but red mist moments where I went, if you don't effing open up that studio now, 5 Live is going to be off air for the next 90 minutes and we're all going to lose our jobs. It was one of those. And that sort of swung it.
Well, that's good then, isn't it?
And then Joe,
sometimes you need to do that.
I'm afraid so. He just wasn't understanding the severity of it. Joe came trundling up, and then that was my next job, was to print off all the scripts, which of course would normally be on laptop.
That'd take a while, wouldn't they?
And then the worst thing happened. The script started printing out in reverse order. So the end of the programme pages were coming off first. And he's got no BBC ENPS system, all the systems and stuff. This is the presenter. And we had no talkback, which is essential when you're doing a radio show, because you just speak very gently into the ear of the presenter.
Right, okay.
And they've got that skill of being able to still talk to their guests, but know what you're asking them to do, or just say
that must be a skill, that.
It's a real skill. I can't do that. Split brain skill.
Imagine doing that.
You say 2 minutes on this, and then we'll move on to so-so. That's all you need to say, and bang on 2 minutes, they'll wrap up and they'll move. They're amazing at it. Right. But we didn't have that. Right. So all that we could do was write notes on paper and hold it up to the glass in this tiny little contribution booth. Fortunately, Network were able to White City main studios took back Network, which meant they can then control output and stuff like that. They were playing in all our clips remotely because they were able to get those off the BBC system.
Right.
But that was awful. So that was Joe writing instructions on a piece of paper, holding them up. Me running up and down this corridor, bringing script items and stuff.
Right, okay.
Getting in contributors on mobiles where they were supposed to be on quality lines and kind of just having them on speakerphone for a moment. And
Wow.
Insane. And actually, it wasn't that faltering. I remember listening back to it.
Wow.
And you could hear something was going on. With a trained ear, you could tell this isn't going smoothly.
General public.
But didn't drop a ball. Like, there were some quite key senior people. Well, John O'Wall didn't notice. So it was the network manager, that's the guy who's in charge of network for today. Phoned me up after and he just went, great save. Well held, that's great save. That is incredible. And then it becomes this kind of best moment from your career in a it was awful but coped kind of way.
No, it sounds good, that.
Yeah. I do remember we were off air at 11. We were on 9 till 11.
Right.
We were off air at 11 and we went straight to the pub across the road.
I bet you did,
and had about 10 pints of Guinness before 3 p.m.
Just to calm down.
Just to calm down. Yeah. Not to promote
medicinal.
Drinking irresponsibly.
Medicinal.
Definitely medicinal, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So did you go into TV more after that, or did you stay mainly in radio? And
there was no way I was going to get promoted to be in a position where I was kind of senior enough in the production company because it was owned and run by 2 people.
Right.
And fair enough, 4 or 5 employees and it's their company. So they're not going to make me a director. So there wasn't a huge radio features production scene up in Manchester, but there was a big telly scene. And actually, I'd never wanted to start out and stay in radio. It was just something that, come the end of my degree, I'd absolutely loved. And it's just so what happens, that's where I got my first opportunity.
Yeah.
So that was 5-6 years in that.
Okay.
A job came up in the Media Guardian, in Broadcast Magazine, in, I think, the BBC's in-house magazine, which we were able to pick up copies of when we were ever in for radio stuff. And I applied, and it was a researcher in development at BBC Entertainment. And development is the engine room of any production company or production department, in that if there's not someone coming up with ideas that then ultimately get commissioned to become on new programmes, new series, returning series, then a creative industry like television production, entertainment, TV specifically, it just
stale,
dies out, goes stale. So people kind of oft overlook what development teams do, but they're so important. Anyway, I'd always like coming up with ideas, feel pretty confident pitching stuff. That's a big part of being a development team member. And I just went belt and braces for putting on a great show for interview. And lo and behold, got the job, which was superb.
No.
So then resigned from All Out, moved across to Oxford Road, and then became a telly person.
Okay.
And was a researcher in that team, and then quickly enough became what you call an assistant producer and then a producer, but working in development. So that's coming up with ideas, road testing them, quizzes, studio shows, factual entertainment shows, things like that. Road testing them and until we think they're ready to pitch to commissioners, and then commissioners either say yes, they either say go and do X
pilot
work, they either say go to a pilot, and you can get 2 types of pilot. You get a non-transmission pilot, which means it's only ever for internal. Or you might get what's called transmission, gets shortened to TX. TX, transmission, RX, record. So you get a TX pilot, or you might go straight to series or short-run series. No. And so that was great. I mean, it's slightly thankless in a way, because the expectation is you get a commission, but 99 times out of 100 for ideas you don't get a commission. Right. So you forever feel like you're not achieving in your job. So there's quite a high burnout rate, because every day you come to work, you've got to be your creative best, either at refining the stuff you're working on or coming up with new stuff. But I did love it. But I found this way of not being unemployed in media production, which is quite a common thing, was to work on programs, and then when something got commissioned, kind of put my hand up to work on it, and then when that had its run, come back into development, because built up enough, I suppose, of a reputation and good relationship with the hiring and firing bosses and stuff. that they wanted me back.
Yeah,
You know, so I flip-flopped for about 4 or 5 years doing that. And BBC Entertainment was really productive at that time. It had a northern office in Manchester and the one down at BBC Television Centre, which bizarrely now is ITV Studios.
Oh.
Like the weird thing that
Right.
happens. So
Strange.
Ant and Dec's Saturday Night
Is that
Takeaway was
from
from
that, is it?
Television Centre, and I know that as BBC
Yeah,
with the dots on the curved wall. And
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a historic building, really, isn't
really
it?
historic. Yeah, so some really cool things I got to work on. I got to work on Dragon's Den a lot.
I applied for that.
Did you?
Years ago, yeah.
Okay.
But I
Are you glad you didn't get on?
Well, I'm not surprised I didn't get on, because at the time, this was before like selling music online was really a thing.
Yeah.
And the people that were involved in this pitch and putting this company together, I mean, there's a long version of this out on my website somewhere.
Right.
But the short version is that it didn't work out.
Okay.
And the lady that was in charge of the marketing was all for trying to pitch for $3.5 million. Yeah, and that was the reaction of most people and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And the reason before that was just before 2000, before the .com like flopped and you know the bubble burst, people were getting that sort of money, and she'd just been involved in another business before that had got $3.5 million, so she was stuck on this number.
Right. Yeah.
And I sort of put that was all in the business plan. The business plan was 50 pages thick.
Okay.
Because it went into every detail. And
Yeah, I've read many business plans working on Dragon's Den.
Have you? Right.
They're absolute-
You might have read mine.
They're absolute thrillers, let me tell you.
Yeah, I can bet they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have put mine in the bin.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I could just I remember thinking this is going to go in the bin, because I was all for like, well, hang on, there, you know, this is a big amount of money. Everybody was saying you need to ask for a lot less, and because there's a team of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
It's funny how entrepreneurs just think far too much of their business ideas and that they're worth so much, you know, and as soon as they get in front of the dragons who then drill into their financials and then point out to them they've got a kind of hope value on their business and that they've come in asking for money for a return percentage based on that hope value, which is magical thinking.
Yeah.
And here's the actual value of your business. So even if I were interested, I'd be looking to put £15,000 in for a 60% stake in your company, because that's what it's worth.
That's the risk.
Yeah, and the risk I'm also taking on. So it was very interesting working in that world.
I bet it was, yeah.
You know, I've got a foot in both camps. I respect and see what amazing business people the Dragons are, but I also see what a nerve-wracking and risky... and also, I suppose, necessary process those looking for investment go through. And they're all lovely people.
Right.
One or two absolute a-holes.
What, in the dragons or in the...
Yes, and I'll say that with caution, because there've been enough dragons that you wouldn't know who. Back when it was only 5 and there'd only been 5, that would have been a bit trickier to say. But yes, there are a couple of dragons that are
Was
not
Simon
great.
Woodruff one of them?
He was initially
Yeah.
Yo Sushi Man.
Yeah,
I didn't work with him. So I worked on Series 2 through to Series 7.
Right, okay.
And it was really difficult to make Series 2.
So you didn't see my business plan, thankfully.
Oh, was that Series 1?
That was before it started.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, we didn't. It would have been an awkward moment.
Yeah, if you remembered it.
Yeah. So Series 2 through to Series 7. Series 2 was so hard to make because Series 1 was so easy to make.
Okay.
Because no one knew what kind of intense forum this would be.
Right.
Sweat dripping down people's eyes and
really
faltering.
You'd have to deal with that, wouldn't you, with the lights?
Clamming up on their words, and you know, there were some absolute classic moments in Series 1. And it became kind of blue chip national television. I mean, we're back in an era where you could think about getting 10, 11 million viewers for that kind of show back then. You know, your top rating shows were getting 17, 18 million views.
It's a lot less now, isn't it?
It's a lot less now. I think Dragon's probably 1 million to 2 million viewers, probably. Wow. So
some YouTube videos get
that's
more
the
than
fragmentation of the audience now. But Series 2 to make was so hard because forewarned is forearmed, as it were. And so we really had to drum up applications and kind of go to business expos and things like that and product expos and really almost do a persuasion job on it. At the end of the day, those that get investment and that investment comes through, it can be life-changing.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You know, there are some amazing success stories that have come out.
Right.
But people just didn't want to be kippered.
Yeah.
And felt that it was unfair. And, you know, it's really interesting what people think. They think that the production's in cahoots with the Dragons, that the Dragons are tipped off on everything that people will go on to get kind of not vilified, but kind of targeted for, because the Dragons are like bloodhounds. They sniff out whatever tiny thing is wrong with the business so quickly. And then people would come back to us afterwards and say, you tipped the Dragons off. They asked me exactly what you asked me in the audition and stuff. They know what they're doing. But equally, by the time I'd done 3 series of it, I really knew what I was doing as well.
Right.
And I'm a television producer, but also I've become really sort of expert at a COD level of expertise in businesses and business plans and projections and trademarks and patents. And I knew when someone was BSing me, you know.
Yeah.
And
you could probably look at it and go, this one's got legs, that one.
Yeah,
is
and
in
by
the
the way,
release.
if you BSing the team, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't get in, because actually
it's entertainment.
We need those stories.
Of course,
and if you're so strident that you want to tell lies to pitch your business, as long as we feel we're aware of that, doesn't mean it negates
that's fair enough.
on the show. If someone's doing something illegal or really unethical or they don't have the patents, then we make very clear you're going in saying you've got this amazing design, but then they're going to ask you about patents. You need to have your answer for that. So there's no setting people up to fail. There's
do it themselves.
Okay, we've done as much due diligence as we can. We've asked you the pertinent questions. You've answered. Whether that answer is satisfying to the Dragons or not, we'll find out. But the worst thing working on that show was when your series producer and your exec producer, because we would sit in it used to be in a warehouse. It used to be genuinely in a warehouse, and that was cool then, because you had the lift feel of it.
And it annoys me every time I watch
also I disagree with the lift because, and I suppose it's an inclusivity thing, which I understand, but going up the stairs had a kind of power dynamic to it. So stylistically, it was great that you had to go up to their loft and be a little bit out of breath because you're going up there to these millionaires. They're in the gods, you
Makes sense, doesn't it?
And actually, a lift, it's too easy a ride. Because I knew the kind of thinking behind them going upstairs.
Right, okay.
So whenever we moved to a new warehouse, we had to look really, really carefully for one that had the right configuration. So staircase on the right-hand side of camera positions, and up they came. But it was a great show to work on. It's a great show because it just caught flight and became almost the biggest show. There was only The Apprentice that rivaled it on BBC. Because that was the era of business entertainment shows, and they're both still going. They're still going strong because they're commissioning them again. You know, so it must be that they are still doing well in the modern context, I suppose. So worked on that for 5 series, flip-flop back to development because it wasn't on all year round. And that's the thing, when you work on short-form contracts, you might do 4 months on Dragon's Den, and then what? Because you're freelance, you're on short-term contracts. So that was the gift for me, was going back to development, doing another stint. And then, because I was in the BBC Entertainment Department, I got to work on Attachment on Strictly, which was fantastic. Cool. That was probably my best high-end TV production experience. Wow. So I was live assistant producer, which means I helped the main producer responsible for the live show. And that was just amazing.
I bet.
There's 150 team members on that, and it swells to about 300 people on transmission day. There's a lot of people working on a show like that.
Some coordination going on there, isn't there?
Yeah. So normally a show would have 1 production manager. I think that had 5 production managers, 5 production coordinators, 5 production secretaries, all looking after a different pillar of what goes into bringing the show together. But honestly, it was the glitziest, most fun, shiniest thing I've ever worked on. But such hard work. You work on those big shiny floor studio shows, so anything from X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, The Voice, Saturday Night Takeaway, all that kind of stuff. When it's on a run and it's a weekly live show, and it's got to be alpha television, like the best, glitziest, most entertaining, slickest, most aesthetic TV going, I think I was clocking up 90 to 100, 110 hours a week. I mean, they were silly, silly hours.
That is.
And I think that's been cleaned up a little bit these days, because I do think that actually that's sort of unsustainable.
Yeah, you can't.
If you work on those kind of shows all the time, and some people do,
they? Right.
They're real junkies for those big shows.
Right.
And what they'll do is they'll take 3 months off in the year, because you earn good money on those.
They
big
probably
shows.
need it.
Yeah. So they'll do 3 back to back.
Yeah.
And then maybe, so lots of them used to do, the people who worked on Loads, then did Dancing on Ice after Strictly, because that comes through in January. And then they would take off March through to May, June time. And then maybe they'd get into the Strictly cycle again and all that stuff. It's bonkers. I did 1 series of Strictly, and I loved every minute of it, but that was probably being enough of a tourist at that high-end level of teleproduction for me. Because, I was not far off getting married and wanted to settle down and stuff, and I think...
It's not the time to start doing those sort of hours.
No, it's not the time to do those hours or that kind of show. And actually, truthfully, I'm more of a factual person, really. My love here and what I teach at Salford is documentary production, factual production.
That's good.
Because that's what I moved into.
Yeah, that's where you came from, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, started out in that and then moved into that. So when I finished at the BBC, which was around 2008-9, I then sort of kicked around for a bit. It was a really bad time to be freelance. Basically 2008 and the whole sort of subprime mortgage crisis that collapsed the world's economies. The TV industry suffered from that too, because ITV was only a couple of weeks from going belly up, purportedly, because advertising had just ceased. And that was its sole business model in those days. It's now diversified how it makes money. It's really interesting, actually, to see how it's become future-proofed and agile and smart as a major PLC business. Right. An old boss from BBC was then head of entertainment at ITV North. And she said, come and work for me, I'll give you 6 months contract. And she did that. And that's how I got into ITV. And then ITV, bit by bit, started to recover financially. And then it needed... So factual television's really cheap compared to drama and big entertainment shows.
Sorry, Alan Partridge popped into my head then.
Well, very true.
You know, he said,
did I have an accidental partridge?
No, you
then?
didn't. But it's when you said factual TV is very cheap, he said something about doing it in a pub car park for 70 grand, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're an Alan Partridge fan. But,
bits and pieces I do know, and I know that quote, and it's not far off, actually.
Is it not? Right.
I mean, budgets for factual are... So television works like this, and... Maybe it's changing, I don't know, but I think it's still this kind of model, particularly ITV. So what brings in audiences are huge live events, big shiny floor entertainment shows that are live. Okay. So you want to watch them live.
Right, yeah.
Sport, of course, and high-end drama. And this was the era of Broadchurch and things like that, which was... crazy viewing figure drama. I mean, it's
never watched it.
Oh yeah. It sort of just caught the nation, right? And so those things cost millions and millions and millions, tens of millions. And factual TV, you get a lot of bang for your buck, because actually it's smaller teams, it's handheld filming or run and gun filming, as they call it, which is kind of you're following people in their lives, you're making programs about real people, you're on location. Yeah. And so you can do it fairly cheap. So it was make hay while the sun shines, as you came out that awful recession period. Yeah. Because that was telly that could fill gaps in schedules but not cost huge amounts of money. So that gave me massive opportunity to just step up to quite senior producer-director roles, because they needed people, because lots of people had left the industry when there was no work. It was that bad. And so I got some real breaks in that, and things like ITV's The Lakes, we call it in the industry warm bath television. So you can imagine this 30-minute factual programme between 2 episodes of Coronation Street. And it's just sort of interesting, curious characters who live and work in the Lake District. And little vignettes of their lives.
I'd probably watch that.
Following a kind of narrative of, there was one guy who was training to swim the channel and stuff like that. And you'll have seen stuff like that on Channel 5, ITV, Channel 4 to a degree these days. But the fact I could turn that stuff out and was confident making those kind of television programmes, well, that was great for me, because then I was a producer-director of those for hire, and I was in gainful employment for a number of years after that. I kind of rode that wave when the big broadcasters couldn't afford high-end drama and studio shows left, right and centre. So the glue that in the schedule sticks all those together, Factual programmes, that was the main pot of commissioning, actually. It was really interesting.
That's good.
And it's just fortunate for me that I was good at that. And so got quite a lot of work out of that. And then had 2 kids, came back to work after paternity leave of our second, Dylan, who you know, plays in our brass band together. I got back to work and they weren't being mean or anything. They just said, have you not brought your case? You're going away to film a pilot this week.
You didn't want to be doing that, did you?
And Abby, my wife, has a section. She's got a toddler and she's also got a newborn. And coming back from paternity leave for work is one thing, but being packed off to the delights of Great Yarmouth to film a pilot thing for 4 or 5 days is another. And it wasn't that anyone was doing anything wrong there. That's just the industry. But it was almost a moment where I went, I can't do this anymore. Okay. And so I started doing bits of guest lecturing and workshops, masterclasses and things down here, because we share the building with ITV. So literally downstairs. That's handy, isn't it? Very handy. Yeah, when I got the job, I finished work at ITV on the Friday and came into work through this other door that you've come through today on the Monday. Yeah, and so became a full-time lecturer.
It's a perfect sort of move, really, isn't it, I suppose? From
really good. And that's not to say that being a lecturer or a senior lecturer now and head of a department is any walk in the park. It is really blooming hard work, but in different ways. And the way it's different mainly is, though it's really hard work, apart from your timetabled lessons, you can be more flexible. If you need to plan things in the evening because you've had to take your son or your daughter to something in the afternoon, well, actually that happened this morning for me, then it's a career where you can do that more easily. So it's really suited me. It's not a convenience career though. I would have been desperately sad to leave 17-year media career and never use those skills again. Absolutely, not overtly anyway.
And it makes a lot of sense that, you know, as a lecturer, you've got that experience, and it's not like you've just read it in a textbook.
Exactly, exactly. And that is modern academia, actually. We get called pracademics, so practitioner academics. Right, okay. So I always try and explain myself as that. What's pracademic? But as soon as you explain that it's a compound word, that it makes sense. I'm a practitioner who's now an academic. Lots of my colleagues are still practitioners. They might work part-time with us, either staff or fixed-term contract base, and they're still working in industry. But universities are so vocationally and industry aligned now. Right. So, I mean, there is a love for learning, but not many people go to university for a love of learning. This is my subject, this is my discipline. Most young people, at least, people coming at 18 to 20 to start a degree, they're doing it because they think that's the career they want to have. And so I think it's really important that predominantly, as a department teaching broadcast media, that most people have worked in broadcast media.
And then you can give them the facts, warts and all.
Yeah, absolutely. But also we've got the contacts.
Yes.
Which means we bring in amazing people all the time. Okay. We also work out and set up incredible live brief projects. So our students are quite regularly working on briefs set by Coronation Street, briefs set by Children's BBC, briefs set by Tonight on ITV. And so there's
and you'll be really familiar with all of that from your career.
Really familiar with that. But also the people giving us those briefs are my former colleagues, still friends. And so, you know, I was hired as much for my little black book of contacts as an ability to stand in front of students and lecture, you know, although that's a skill in of itself. Indeed, not everyone comes in from industry and clicks with lecturing.
No, because I suppose you've got to have a certain patience for that, I imagine, as well.
And a certain kind of a patience, definitely, but also an appreciation of how people learn things.
Right, okay.
And it's not that you just come in and impart your industry knowledge and expect them to just absorb that like a sponge and be able to do it. You have to take them through a series of almost threshold gateways of learning. Right. And appreciate that actually it's going to be difficult and they're not going to understand and they're not going to deliver what you would hope they will in 3 years' time, and that it's an iterative developmental process.
So do you think when the kids are grown up and do you think you'll ever go back to your old career, or are you happy where you are now?
Lots of people ask me that. I think once you're out of it and once you're off that treadmill, it is a bit like being match fit as a sports person.
Right, okay.
It'd be like coming back from injury.
Yeah.
Not that I don't work at a high pace now and do a lot of hands-on production stuff here, but ultimately I'm mentoring people, I'm coaching people,
Yeah.
I'm training people, I'm teaching and lecturing and supervising people. And that's got a really nice rhythm to it. And also I am tapping into those skills, but the idea of picking up 4 bags, shoving them in the back of a boot, driving for 7 hours to a location,
Yes.
filming intensively either all day that day or overnighting and then doing 2 more overnights, getting what you need in the can, ingesting the rushes into a laptop late at night, backing it up on a hard drive, reading your shooting schedule for the next day, finessing on it, writing your questions so they're right, getting up at 6 a.m. because you want to make the best of the daylight, doing 2 more days of that, maybe even 2 weeks on the road.
Yeah.
That for me is a young man's game or a young person's game. Loads of people are doing it well into their 50s and 60s.
Oh, right, okay.
And they have the energy for it and they have the love for it and admiration for them. But I think now I've done something different. It would be hard to go into it full tilt as a job again.
Yeah.
That said, I love creating content.
So never say never.
Never say never, but I think I'd do it on my own terms. I think I'd
Yeah.
do film fund, budgeted things that maybe you get an idea for a documentary and you go and pitch to a film fund and then you get 50,000 or 200,000, whatever it might be, to go and make your film. But it's not for broadcast, it's for independent release or, cinema distribution, that kind of thing. I say that like that's easy to just walk into and do. It's not. You still have to go through that tendering process and stuff. Or just make stuff for the love of it. The beauty of the kit in the last 10 years is I can make broadcastable, if not higher standard stuff on the kit we have in our kit store at the university.
Yeah, and it'll just get better, won't it, as well?
Yeah, funnily enough, lots of my colleagues who now do have kids who are in high school or have left school, they're now coming back as, you can call it practice as research. So they've got a research allocation within the university and they're now making documentaries that might be researching aspects of producing documentary, or it might be on audience reception, or it might be about citizenship of the university and working on kind of making films that help social enterprises, not in a promo film way, in a proper robust documentary way, but in a way that they get to make things again. They're doing practice of research, but there's real world impact for the people that take part and it's of benefit to them.
Okay.
So that kind of stuff is attractive.
Right.
And that's the beauty of being in a university, I think. It's a place to further knowledge. It's a place to play with new techniques.
Yeah.
But it hasn't got the crazy treadmill running a marathon at sprint pace world of full on for broadcast media production. Because it's plumbing hard work.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
So how do you think the future will be with AI?
It is the topic of the moment, isn't it?
It certainly is.
And I'm a techno-optimist, right? Let's put it like that.
That's interesting.
I've seen film and TV editors terrified that their career is ending because non-destructive editing came onto computers, where once upon a time the idea it's non-destructive is you used to cut up film,
of course,
obviously,
right, I'm with you now,
and stick it
yeah,
together,
absolutely.
and that's why it's called non-linear, non-destructive editing. To you and me, computer editing.
Yeah, indeed.
Right?
But it gives you a lot of freedom.
Yeah, editors thought their days were numbered.
Right.
And actually, they just had to retrain. If they didn't feel they could retrain and they were old enough to retire, lots retired. But then they became amazing editors. And what you saw benefit on screen was just the incredible tools and abilities to edit. But not everyone can sit at those editing software packages and edit like a professional editor, right? And that I think is going to be the case still with AI.
Okay.
Perhaps I'm being a little rose-tinted and utopian. There are going to be processes and workflows, and at the minute, I chaired a panel for the RTS Futures, which is like up-and-coming students, young people who want to know about the screen industries through Raw Television Society. And there's a guy who founded and runs an animation company called Blue Zoo Animation. They make loads of CBBC stuff, loads of amazing animations for younger audiences and things. And at the minute, he said that they're very transparent with their employees, but also with their clients, and that actually they're using it to keep humans on the stuff that needs human creativity, human authorship, that makes animation, even if it's computer generated, have human story, human feel to it.
Well, it has to be as well, because there's no copyright if there's no human involved.
Yeah, exactly. So from an IP point of view as well, it's really important. But his view in the here and now, AI is really, really helping to them do under the hood donkey work stuff that really people with other more important tasks in their job were having to spend inordinate amounts of time doing. I spoke to our industry advisory panel last week, the people that are high level in industry or appropriate levels of an industry and different sections of screen and broadcast and radio, audio industries. And they, from a factual documentary, unscripted production standpoint, AI is not a part of content production at all. For working out schedules and budgets and things, yes.
Is that because they've locked it out? Or
Well, they're locking it out, again, for the copyright point of view and the IP aspect of it, but also from an audience trust and from a what people want to watch.
Yeah,
right?
there's a split, isn't
there is a split. I don't know about you, but I am now fed up of my Instagram feed and the reels because there's so much AI bluff on there. Yeah. And it's not good enough yet to not tell, right? And you know, if one guy tells me about Tai Chi any more times and has like a six-pack, and I'm like, you don't get that from Tai Chi. And also, you're an AI creation.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's that rule, isn't there, that the EU are bringing in August. Yeah. And that's going to change it as well. Because I'm like you, I'm really getting fed up of looking at something on Facebook or Instagram or wherever and going, that's it. It is interesting, but it's not real.
Yeah, it's not real.
And it takes you minutes to realise it's not real. Yeah. But with that little AI label that's going to be on everything, then now I'm starting to see on Facebook AI info, and I just scroll past.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was interesting. You know, it's a novelty in the first few hundred times you see something made with AI, but then it gets.
So I think what people will be willing to watch and listen to and consume will have a big say into what degree it comes into professional content production. I really do. And so at the minute, it is a flat no for mainstream broadcast production of a factual nature. Same for drama, I would imagine, at the minute. And I see no need for it other than for VFX in TV studio shows and things like that. So you'll have seen Strictly do a kind of AR thing. So they add to their set with augmented reality. That's not really AI, but it's in that realm.
Yeah, it's in that realm, like CGI.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it kind of is the same. It is the same sort of thing, isn't it? It's just probably going to merge.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about AI now, but AI has been part of our lives for ages, like any help bot, systems and voice recognition and things like that on call centre things.
Indeed.
And banks have been using AI. It's only because it's risen to the consumer level.
It's got scary now.
It's got scary, and there's been this kind of exponential improvement in what it can do because it's kind of, it's turned that corner. I mean, personally, and we had some contention this year because it's interesting with students. So you would think they're all in, right? Because they're young, they're techno-optimists, they're big into what the future holds.
You would think, wouldn't you?
You would think, but we've gone through 3 distinct phases, right? First phase when they cottoned onto it, and I'm not saying all students, like handfuls, if they were using it, they were probably using it to cheat a little bit on essay writing and things like that. Yeah. Okay? Yeah, that's understandable. We then clamped down on that and said a flat no and started to bring through counter tools that could kind of give an indication of whether that was the case or not. And the university said no AI. Like, that was our policy. And then very quickly, actually, it became a experiment with AI and devolved it to subject level where we could kind of stipulate to what level we could play and kind of experiment with AI. And then this last year, I've gone, well, I'm a techno-optimist. There is no closing the door to this. It's already bolted, right? We have to be on board with this. The panels I've taken part in and chaired, everyone on the panel, whatever their view of AI, has said it is here to stay and it's coming through full force. And whether you like it or not is irrelevant. If you want to work in the creative industries, you will need, to a degree, to become skilled AI users. Because, and, you know, this was for people people heading towards the creative sector as a future career, AI is not necessarily coming for your job binary per se like that. AI is coming for your job because people who are skilled users of AI are going to get your job. If you're going to stay out the race and on an ethical or personal moralistic standpoint not be involved, or just because you're plain scared of it, then you will de-skill very quickly. You won't have the appropriate skills to work in
You can't have
creative
blitzers on.
sector. The other interesting thing we've had is because, of course, we now have Copilot as part of Office 365. We're being encouraged to use that for enhanced resources and things like that.
Right.
So I run a final project module. We've only ever had the person power to be able to produce an assessment brief, a generic set of deliverables, and some general guidelines to what we call our snapshot assessments, where we meet our students at commissioning stage of their idea, at pre-production stage of their idea, and then at rough cut finish stage of their idea. This year, I was able to do the work of 10 academics, and I produced the main assessment brief, but then I produced this incredible set of genre-specific deliverables. We've got 8 genre choices on our final project module. I then produced the same again for the 3 snapshot meetings that are assessed, and they were genre specific this time, right? And I was able to do that in a week. And then a couple of students who cottoned on to this asked the question, and I'm happy to be transparent. There's nothing to hide here. That I'm doing nothing wrong. I'm using generative AI with my expertise as a former TV and radio producer, but also as now quite an experienced academic, to use that as a writing partner and to generate the versions per genre, but then, of course, read them and sign off on them. And there was this, I guess, pitchfork hungry mob that were kind of coming for me because how dare I use AI when they're paying for their degree and I should be slaving at my desk to produce these materials.
Well, you were.
Well, I was. But the point is, you wouldn't have had those very specific genre materials if we didn't have that as a working partner.
They had extra.
You had extra this year. We've now got a very robust and more detailed AI policy that applies to both staff and students. It's literally been published last week.
Right, so you're a bit of a trailblazer.
I have a way of working which is, because otherwise you never get anything done. At the BBC, so locked down and protocols are so tight, right, that you can, if you ask, can I do that? They say no. Same at ITV to a certain degree. Absolutely the same at a university. So call me a maverick, but I've always gone, I'm just going to experiment. I'm going to do things unless it explicitly says you can't, until someone tells me I shouldn't have done that. And then I'll stop.
So beg for forgiveness.
And I almost, beg for forgiveness, not for permission. I've always felt that to stay ahead of the game, to be a 21st century media course, we can't wait around for policies to be written until we act. If there's no policy, then we'll just do what we think is right. But we can't not be operating in that space. We can't be ignoring it. And as a result, outgoing third years have to a degree experimented and played with generative AI as part of modules and courses, because I think we would have been doing them a real disservice not to have done that.
I think you're right.
It doesn't mean they like it. And actually, we've made ourselves the bad guys, as I've just explained in a couple of ways. But actually, I think you can be a little too idealistic, perhaps at a young age, perhaps at any age. I think lots of generations are really worried about AI.
Yeah, of course.
But you do have to know what you're disliking. And knowing what you're disliking means getting involved and playing and experimenting and understanding it.
Because without that change, they wouldn't have had any understanding of it.
So exactly.
You've sort of introduced something that makes them consider it and look at the merits of it.
And there's a woman here, Steph Clond, who's doing her PhD. She's a former Factual producer, director, filmmaker.
Oh, right, okay.
In normal film, edit, linear television terms. She's now jettisoned all that, and she is a signed up full-time AI filmmaker.
Wow, I've seen a few of them around.
I
find it interesting.
Really interesting, and not for everyone.
No.
Distasteful to some that you haven't used
crap.
humans, and quite often that, which is a trigger point for you. But her view is she's now able to make the films that have only ever been able to exist in her head, either because she can have these fantastical, incredible Mid-Journey created or Google VO3 visuals, but mainly because of the gatekeepers who are willing to give you money in an industry. So she'd had this idea for a film that no one was willing to put money into, and then she's made it as an AI film, and it's absolutely exploded.
Right.
And she's now invited to panels here. She's got into film festivals there. And
Is it out on the web, this one?
yeah, it is, and I'm hesitating to give it its name because I can't remember, but I think it's called
maybe
Roots, and it's about tying in the metaphor of Afro-Caribbean post-slavery hair braiding, but also the Windrush generation. And it's really clever because the hair braids become the ropes of the Windrush as they dock in and things like that. So there's all this AI morphing stuff going on. And it's evocative and it's really quite impactful. Really good. But yeah, the terrifying thing is the only reason it's good is because it's taken everyone's work that exists before it.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I see that as the big issue. I mean, to me, AI has changed a lot of things. I mean, we're doing stuff now. Our business is changing. I don't think that's all to do with AI.
No.
I'd say a large part of it isn't to do with AI. It's to do with corporate greed. But that's another sort of story that.
But also things like YouTube Creator Studio, where if you're going to put your content on YouTube, they've got this incredible music library that's royalty free, and they've got the deep pockets to have almost got ghost writers and you know, quite decent name people to produce music.
I mean, the YouTube market isn't something we try to serve anymore.
Right.
It used to be, but people would come along and they would license a track, and that would be it. And then the likes of KSI came along, and he was a good customer for a while, and he'd license hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tracks.
Right, and now he doesn't need to.
He doesn't need to now, because there's companies that give him hundreds of tracks for like 20 quid a month or something. And while that works well for a business that owns all the tracks, if you've got hundreds of independent composers, that 20 quid gets divided into very small amounts of money to the point that it's not worth doing the music.
Well, it's like artists on Spotify, isn't it? And the pence they'll earn for an entire career just because they're not Beyonce, who can earn on that platform, right? But if you're an okay artist that had a 3-year bout of popularity, it doesn't mean then you put your tracks on Spotify, you're suddenly going to cash in, because you just get 0.0001p of a listen.
Indeed. Well, the problem is a lot of the libraries have turned the music licensing libraries into like Spotify versions for music licensing, and so that's where we're sort of
you pay a subscription and then
and then it's just so, like, you know, the old days. I mean, I've got over 500 tracks out there that are sending me royalties, but in the last 5 years, they've dropped by 80%. The royalties just slowly gone down, because what happened was a few libraries decided to introduce this subscription. And while in principle I don't have anything against that, if you buy 30,000 tracks, you get hire different composers, and you buy outright 30,000 tracks, like one company did that I won't mention because I don't want to give them an advert.
No.
But if you buy out 30,000 tracks, then you're entitled to sell them in any way you like. But if you've got composers contributing to a library and you're giving them 40% of whatever sale comes out, that used to be like you'd get 40% of like $30 most of the time. Now you get 30% of whatever's in that pool from thousands of composers. And I've literally been paid a cent and zero on a few occasions, and usually it's less than £1 that I get paid now, when it used to be, 15 quid, 12 quid.
And in a way, that's not AI, that's the subscription model, right?
That's business,
the download on demand thing. That's the
corporate greed.
No longer own music, even when it's digital. It just exists on servers, and I'm going to pay for access to all of that.
Yeah, but that's corporate greed, isn't it? Because it's it's like they don't care about the welfare
pyramid scheme.
Yeah, they don't care about the composers. You see, they just care about thousands and millions of people, or whatever it is, paying that 20 quid a month. They're not bothered about the composers that are getting like a few pounds. Instead of few £100 or whatever they used to get.
So I think that's the truth of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
To bring it back to AI, it's not what AI can do, it's who's controlling the AI and what are their motives. We've got an expert here who is really against AI coming into the creative sectors. I mean, she really sort of feels that we should be gatekeeping that.
I don't agree with that.
I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle, but her analogy, I think this is the bit I was working towards, is, you know, your big five that are going to control the mainstream of AI. They've gone the drug dealer business model route or business plan route, which is your first one's for free. In fact, you can have 10 for free, but now, you like it now you're hooked. Now we're charging you. Now we're introducing credits, right? And then that stops it being democratized, where it's been democratized in a way to begin with, because then how are schools going to deal with that? How are NGOs or social enterprises going to be in the world of needing to generate things through AI when it's got a price tag to it, and then the price goes up because they lock it down. So it's that element to it. The other thing that terrifies me is...
But it started before that. It started when they scraped the entire world's creative output and trained the database.
Well, of course.
On that, because that's where the issue lies now, because it started with stock photographers. Their income went into the subscription model and got obliterated. And then it went to videos, and then it's gone to music and sound effects. But then all these AI models are trained on all of this as well. So it's like, you know, the major labels are suing Suno and people like that because they know that their output
has formed the basis. It's a weird one, that, isn't it? I was thinking about that. And of course, a human being can't possibly hoover up all that copyright content, right? But essentially that's what humans do too, is they spend a lifetime listening to music and seeing art and watching films, and then maybe they become a director or a composer or a performer themselves, and they are still,
in a sense,
because a baby can't write a concerto, right? But an 18-year-old musician maybe can, if you're Mozart, because they've spent their life listening to and absorbing. But the problem is, because I don't think I'm advocating for AI taking people's work, the problem is this is it on a lightning speed industrial scale where it's not traceable as influences, but it's clear that it is drawing from human authorship since time began. You know,
there are examples that you can tell where it came from in music. You know, you listen to it and you think that's, oh no, it's not. So it does happen more often than you would think. I suppose the only difference with the human is that through that sort of lifetime of slowly absorbing certain skills and certain patterns and what have you, you do create you have your own sort of input and your own creativity that adds to that.
Absolutely.
Whereas AI doesn't really do that.
No.
At the moment.
No.
I mean, whether it will in the future, but all that does, it reorganises stuff that's already there.
I mean, it comes down to legislation and policy and kind of agreements at a governmental level with creative sectors and things like that. I think the Labour government now has realised it was completely blinkered in the way it talked about waiving issues around copyright to support the build and the expansion of generative AI, and now is sort of rowing back quite hastily on that.
Oh, that's good.
I
mean, there's so many cases going on for infringement. So I think that the problem is as well, there hasn't been any transparency.
Test case or...
Well, there's some test cases now, but there hasn't been transparency in people using AI or how they trained it. Because, you know, you could set up an AI service tomorrow spitting out video clips, and you didn't have to say, well, this is trained on that company's work and that company's work, and you don't have to pay them, you know. Whereas I think if they can get to a point where you have to be transparent about your source and you have to pay, because there is good money in AI as well. If you sell it, if you sell your content to an AI company, it can be like
really lucrative. It's one of the big Hollywood producers or studios basically started investing in the development of their content creation AI platform. and they thought, and I can't remember which one it was now.
Was it Disney? Or?
No, it wasn't. No. Look it up. But they have a huge back catalogue of movies. And even with their huge raft of back catalogue, they couldn't get the AI to do convincing enough generative content, because even their huge 70 years of content isn't enough.
Video content?
Performed content, so audio things, so music composed for their films and all that kind of stuff. Actors' voices, of course, they own their image rights, but they don't own that performance within that. The studio does, right?
Tricky one.
Anyway, they abandoned it because there just wasn't enough back catalogue content to make a convincing generative AI tool that would serve future productions, because their view was, we ring fence it, it's our copyright, therefore if we can use it to create content, special effects, performances of AI actors, be that with someone's face and they get paid but they don't have to act, because it just fell flat on its arse. So the only way that's going to happen is breach of copyright, because you need the world's content for the last 100 years to get anywhere near convincing enough to be professional level content that will fly within a big name or big box office film.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Because, people can't... But, some people talk about fair use, but it's not fair use. That's another thing altogether. No. But you can't just use somebody's copyrighted content to generate an income for yourself.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, these companies seem to be able to do that at the moment.
But
they will be stopped, probably.
There will be.
It's all about money, isn't it?
It's like our policy here. It's like the person I speak to on our industry panel works for Sky, and they haven't got a policy yet. It's just a blanket no. Right. And she said that's going to need to change. But because it's caught us napping, really, it's because it's moved so fast. We should have had a policy that's robust 3-4 years ago, but it was only just coming through to the public consciousness beyond the tech sector 3-4 years ago. So we're playing catch up a little bit, and I hope that human decency and human authorship wins over, and that actually some regulation comes into force that sort of prevents the loss of creative humans. I mean, that would just be tragic, right? You'd only ever do it for fun rather than be able to ever have a career or an
creativity would stop because people wouldn't be able to do it in the volume needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the only thing I am genuinely terrified about is that kind of sentient stage of AI where, I'm wearing a Skynet t-shirt, not now, but latterly. I bought one off the internet because I thought it's a bit of a wry joke to when the machines take over, but there are now people who've worked high up in AI, like giving call to action warnings that when AI becomes cleverer than us, we don't get a say anymore. And it may, this is like a dystopian end to the podcast, it may decide that humans, not as intelligent but more destructive than its sentient self, are no longer necessary.
Well, let's hope not, eh? Do you think that's a good point to end it on?
On that cheery note.
On that bombshell.
There's an amazing podcast, like a drama podcast called Forest 404.
Okay.
Which is all about that.
Is it? Right.
So just to bring it up slightly.
All right, I'll have to have a look at
beautifully
that.
produced. The sound design in it by humans is phenomenal. But it is a dystopian sci-fi drama where the idea is that, the AI cyborg replicants of humans became the main.
Okay.
And humans gone.
I'm a techno-optimist as well.
Yeah.
So I think it could be really good for humanity in general.
Yeah.
If it just is handled right.
Like humans and all things, like the planet.
The planet,
how we treat it environmentally. Yeah. So we don't have a great track record, but
well, we just have to see where we go, don't we?
Yeah, hope so. Yeah. We'll still get to band on Saturday.
Indeed,
blow some wrong notes.
If it's still there.
That's human. Good stuff.
Right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee. Went all over the place.
You did.
But it's been fun.
It has, yeah.
Thank you.
Media Music Now. Conversations.